Hey everyone, welcome to a very special live stream. Today we have some special guests in store and some special things going on. I'm so happy to have you guys here. First of all, thank you so much for clicking on this live stream because on this beautiful Friday afternoon, you could be doing anything in the world, but you chose to be here with us. And I'm super duper excited to have you here. So before we get started, we have just a couple of announcements right now on my website. If you would like to support this particular live stream or if you would like to support myself as an artist, right now, if you visit my website, everything site wide is 40% off. All of our canvas prints ship free, and everything else ships within about 2 days. So if you're interested in supporting myself, Brittany Lewis, and I don't even know if I introduced myself, let me start over. My name is Brittany Lewis, and I am a professional artist and graphic designer. And usually on Sundays, we go live to work on my very special project, my very favorite thing in the world, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. But again, today we have a very special live stream where we have two very talented artists that are going to be here with us drawing live. And I do encourage you all to draw with us live as we go through the process of learning how to study an image and how to create a composition based on a reference. And so we'll get into all of my favorite art tips and tricks and things like that. Now, back to the announcement. If again you like this live stream, if you find something valuable in this live stream, there are a few ways that you can support it. For one, the easiest, the quickest, the freest way to do that is to hit the thumbs up. The second way to do that again is to visit my website, and everything will be linked in the description. And once we bring our guests on, please be sure to show them support. Be sure to patronize all of their projects and things like that. So I'm very, very excited about that. So before we get into it, I am going to close this out for a bit. And then what I'm going to do is give you guys a very quick tour of what we'll be working in today and what we'll be working on today. So I work in a program called Clip Studio Paint. This is my digital painting program of choice. There are tons and tons of options out there for you to choose from if you're getting into digital creation. And if you are thinking about being a digital illustrator, there are lots and lots of options. And they usually all have the same tools, right? So what I'll do really quickly is give you guys a bit of a walkthrough of what Clip Studio Paint looks like, what tools we're going to be using as we work through this particular image, and then you can follow along in your program of choice, and we'll just kind of use some of the things that everyone has access to: your brushes, your erasers, your pen and pencil tools, your lasso tool. No matter what program you're working on or working in, they'll all usually have the same tools, right? So without further ado, if I can find my pen, I'm a little discombobulated today. Friday live streams is a little different. It's fun, and I'm really, really excited to be here. So it might take me a little minute to find my stride, but I think we'll be okay. So what we're looking at right now is our program screen. And in that, you will see a couple of boxes, right? So our first box, and I'll circle it really big, is going to be our viewer. This gives me access to the entire canvas, right? So if I'm zoomed in very tight, so if I zoom in here, you'll notice that I will zoom in on my canvas, but a red box appears in my navigator screen that shows me where on the canvas I am. So if I'm doing some very detailed work on a large canvas, this will give me an idea of where I am within the greater image. So that is our navigator screen. In Clip Studio Paint, they do have a sub view, which is my reference panel. Now, some programs may not have this particular option, but Clip Studio Paint does. So it allows me to have my reference on screen so that I'm able to view it at the same time that I'm viewing whatever it is that I'm drawing. So if I am working on this particular image, and let's say I don't have the actual picture on my canvas, then I can look into my reference panel, and that will allow me to see the picture that I'm trying to draw or study from, or the picture that I'm using in my artwork. So that is our reference panel. To the left of that, this long skinny panel with all of these little odds and ends with the magnifying glass, the box, the navigator, the pens and pencils, and all of those, that is going to be our toolbar. Now, most programs, again, have pretty much the same setup. A lot of them will have a different set of tools. You have your zoom tool. In Clip Studio Paint, there is an operations tool, because within Clip Studio Paint, you have the ability to work within 3D models. So that gives you an opportunity to manipulate and change aspects of 3D models with this particular tool. You also have the selection tool, which I call the lasso tool, and there is actually a specific lasso tool depending on the name of the program that you're working on. So within Photoshop, for example, this will be called the lasso tool. Within Clip Studio Paint, this is the selection tool. You also have your eyedropper. This allows you to pick up color across your canvas. So if I wanted to paint in a blue sky, specifically the color of this blue sky, this eyedropper tool will allow me to pick up that color, and then I can take my brush and I can draw in that particular color on my canvas, and it'll give me that exact brush, that exact color. So that is the eyedropper tool. That is one of the more important tools, that and the lasso, that we'll be kind of working with today. We also have our brushes, our pens and pencils, our spray painters, our paint bucket. All of those things are going to be located within the tool panel off to the left of our screen. Now, on the right side of our screen, there is another set of tool panels. Now, when you get Clip Studio Paint, your setup is going to be slightly different, but this is the way that I have it set up, just to make things easier and make the workflow a lot easier and smoother for myself. But within this, at the very top of our screen where it says Restream, there's going to be our color panel. So within our color panel, you have different options that you can choose. If you're working in print, more times than not, you'll want to work in CMYK. If you're working for something specifically for a screen, you're going to work in RGB. But I like to work in hue, saturation, and value, because that allows me to keep more control over the specific color that I'm using, the specific saturation, meaning how bright or vivid that color is, and then the value, which deals with your light to dark, right? So if we were to turn our saturation all the way down at the very top, where there is a V, that is our value, we'll get a grayscale from black all the way to stark white. So this panel, the way, hue, saturation, and value, is sort of my color picker of choice. You'll see people use a color wheel that looks a little bit something like this. And again, this is at the very, very top of the screen. You'll see people use a color wheel. You'll see people use a sort of a block picker such as this. I just prefer to use the hue, saturation, because it gives me a full rainbow of color, a full sort of range of saturation, meaning again how vivid the color is, and then the full range of value, and I can just move things, or you can enter values at the top. Below that, we have the layer properties. So right now we are working in just a pixel layer. This is a blank layer, and the only thing we've drawn in it is the little color swatch. And so, the more you develop an image, usually you'll want to add more layers. Again, this is something that's completely up to preference. So depending on how you work as a digital artist, you may not even choose to work on layers. There are people who decide that they would like to just draw everything on one layer, and that's perfectly a preference. I tend to work in a lot of layers because the way layers work is very much indicative of the name, right? So let's say I'm drawing something on my hand, and I've drawn all these lines in my hand, and I love how the lines look on my hand, but maybe I want to experiment and add a little bit of color to the bottom of my hand, right? But I don't necessarily want to disturb what I've done in the drawing of my hand, right? So what I will do is I will create a new layer on top of that, and then I will draw on it, and everything behind it is transparent unless I draw on it. So of course, where there is black, you would not be able to see it because that's the part that I painted on. And it allows me to manipulate the layers. It allows me to make changes without interrupting what I've already created below it. So I love layers. I'm a team layer girl. Typically I'll have maybe 20 layers or so, and I'll show you guys a little bit about what that looks like in a picture that we've been working on for a while. So if I open up our Two of Wands, which is the picture that we've been working on every Sunday, right above my head, you guys are going to see all of the different layers and things that I work in. And that sort of keeps my canvas organized, and it allows me again to make changes to certain things without interrupting sort of what I've already worked on. So it's going to take it a little bit of time to open, but I do want to show you guys that and the importance of layers. So whether you're working in Procreate, whether you're working in Krita, whether you're working in Photoshop, whether you're working in Clip Studio Paint, all of these programs are going to have the ability to add layers to your canvas. So again, that you're not interrupting something that you like, or maybe you can play and experiment without disturbing what you've already done, which can take a little bit of time. So this is, and I'm a little bit frozen, but we'll come back just a second, but you guys hopefully can still hear me. So right above my head is my layers panel. And within this, and I'm going to scroll up and up through it, I'll make it a little bit bigger. There are lots and lots of layers in this particular image. And even within this folder, there are lots and lots of layers to show, all of the different things that I've added to this particular canvas, so that I can just work on individual aspects of the picture without disturbing anything in between. So that is the layers panel. And the part that you cannot see, which is up under my face, is the history panel. Now, within the history panel, you can actually backtrack some of the work that you've done, right? So let's say that I have um, did a stroke here, right? That it records that stroke. Let's say I do another stroke here, it also records that stroke. And so within that, there is a history of actions that have been taken on this canvas that I am able to then go back and backtrack in. I can hit the undo button, which is a Command Z on an Apple computer or Control Z on a Windows computer. And then if you're working on Procreate, if I'm not mistaken, it is the double tap that'll allow you to go back within the history panel. You can track it back as far as you want to, and there is no limit to that. So we'll go back a couple of times and then we're back in the building. So I do see that our guests are here. So I'm super excited to have them on. What I'm going to do is go ahead and bring them on and allow them to introduce themselves and tell you all about who they are, what they love to work on. And then what we'll do is get into our discussion, and we'll learn how to draw a little bit today. And then let's see. So we're going to bring on Miss Leigh here first. Hey, Leigh.
Hello. Hi, Brittany.
So we can see you. And let's see. I'm going to turn this off, and we're going to. There we go. So we can see you. Hey, Leigh. Hey,
Hey.
so if you're not a stranger to this live stream, you've seen Leigh pop up a lot of times. Me and Leigh be so
Lots
Leigh,
of questions in the chat
yes,
from me
and
for sure.
I so appreciate you so much for that, because I'm happy to help, and if there's anything that I can share, I love to hear it from you, right? So if I can hear it from you, then I can answer directly. So without further ado, excuse me, I'm gonna stop talking for a second. Leigh, please introduce yourself and let us know who you are, where you're from, and what you like to do.
Sure, yeah. No, thank you so much again, Brittany, for letting us come and hang out with you on your stream. Yeah, I'm Leigh or Leah. I use they, she pronouns. I am still very new in my creative practice, artistic journey. Um, it's been a really great tool or uh, practice to be able to be better at expressing myself
Mm-hmm.
and trying things and being a little bit more imaginative and playful. So I have kind of been trying a little bit of everything, whether that's painting or drawing or
Mm-hmm.
collage, journaling, um, and I'm still trying to figure out which tools I lean towards the most, and
Mm.
definitely learning from you every week about like digital art and illustration is really it's really cool. I think it's a skill that I'd like to continue growing. Um, but kind of as someone who doesn't have like any formal training or like background in all of the theory that goes into art and making art. Um, Definitely just happy to connect with people who are sharing what brings them to their creative practice and things that help support them as they're learning and trying out different tools and resources and approaches. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
I love that. That's so awesome. And I think you said something super important that I would encourage anyone exploring their artistic creation. Try everything, right? Try
Yes.
everything. That helps you develop your style, and then two be but it also helps you sort of see what it is that you like, what you're naturally drawn to. So even if you like, say, okay, I love collage art, but you know what? I kind of like how watercolor flows. So let me figure out a way to incorporate the two. So I think that is so important. So I love that. Thank you so much, Leigh. And our
Yes.
next special guest, Miss Sam. Sam's in the building.
Hi.
How are you, Sam?
I'm good. I'm good. Hi, everybody. I'm Sam. I use she, they pronouns. I'm Haitian American, queer woman. I'm, it's a weird saying I'm an artist, but I'm an artist and I'm a
Yes.
healer. And I specifically do a lot of sound meditation.
Mm,
My art comes from that, so music, but as well as I do pillared candles, I draw on them and I divine through that. So I'm very interested in how my art can explore spirituality and liberation in ways. Yeah, and just trying to make it be a part of my holistic wellness. I try to do like, there's somebody on YouTube who does like ugly art, and I try
mm,
to like be a part of that, and especially thinking about therapy in ways. So I'm like trying to think about how art can be incorporated in that way. I'm not officially trained in art therapy, but I'm starting to really want to get a better understanding of that. But I mainly do the candle, the sound, I draw a little bit. Um, yeah. I used to explore more different art forms when I was younger, like high school and college. Like I love ceramics. But I never really got into the digital space. And that's why I'm
mm.
so excited to like try to make something. Yeah, please don't clown me or Leigh. Don't clown us when we like take a dab at this. But yeah,
Oh no!
excited.
Listen. After this two of wands is done, we're gonna go down memory lane, and I'm gonna show you guys some of my old digital work. Right?
Mhm.
Everybody starts somewhere. It's just a matter of enjoying it, right? Don't think too much
Mhm.
about it. Don't be too, hard on yourself. Everybody starts. And when I started, I think that at the time it wasn't as mainstream as it is. I think there were a few people that were dibbling and dabbling in it here or there. And so
Mhm.
I've made tons of ugly art. you know, I made tons of art but it was the best that I could do, and I was hella proud
Mhm.
of it at the time. So no matter where you are in your journey, it don't matter. Everybody starts at some point. We're not all experts until we become experts. So you have to
Mhm.
practice, and we have to get there. So earlier, just if you guys know, we've had a couple people come in. We did do a little bit of a tour of our digital painting software. So what we're going to do now is Sam had the brilliant idea because
Mhm.
which I thought was an excellent idea to show you guys how I would approach drawing in an image, right? Based in the digital space. And then what I'm going to do is walk you guys through what I look for, what I would encourage looking at if you're picking an image to study from and to draw from. And I hope that you guys watching will also draw along, whether you're drawing digitally, if you're drawing traditionally. All of these principles will apply. Now, of course, we are working in a digital space. So, a lot of the tools and things that I'll discuss are going to be very specific to digital artwork. But again, even though I'm working in Clip Studio Paint, most digital programs are going to have pretty much the same functionality. So, I'll try to keep it very, specific to the digital. So, we'll just use brushes. We'll go through our lasso tool. We'll go through different, very universal tools so that no matter what it is that you're working in, you'll be able to use it. But the main thing is that we want to be able to break down these images so that no matter your style and no matter where you are in your artistic journey, you'll be able to use these same principles to sort of illustrate, at your own leisure, at your own pace, at your own skill level. So, without further ado, let's get on back into that. So I'm going to switch us back to share my screen, and I have set up for us a canvas. And for those of you who are super new to digital painting, your art space, the place where you are going to be working, is a canvas. Now I have this one set up in a landscape portrait. This is just a regular old screen resolution. I think it's 1920 by 1080. Generally, when you're working in digital work, when you're setting up a brand new file, you will have the option. I'll show you guys just a moment what that looks like. You'll have the option to change the units of measurement within your canvas. So I have it set to inches because the last picture that I was working on, we're going to be transferring that to be an actual acrylic painting. I just did the sketchwork digitally so I could just print it out and then sketch it, transfer it to the canvas. So this is set into inches, but you do have the option to go to centimeters, millimeters, inches, pixels, and points. Now, pixels is probably the most common because our digital sort of, your Instagram posts, your thumbnails and things like that are usually measured in pixels, but all of that can be converted into inches, millimeters, centimeters, and so on and so forth. I just have this canvas, and I think I selected one of the presets. I think it was like 1920 by 1080, and I just set that up and then created our canvas. Now, again, what we have on the screen is two very important pieces of information. The first is going to be our navigator screen, which is at the very, very top. This is pretty much a world view of what we're going to be looking at, so that no matter where I zoom in on the actual active canvas, this part, the navigator, doesn't change. So it sort of shows me where it is I am, and it gives me a little bit of a zoomed out view of my canvas so that I can see whether or not something is standing out the way that I want it to, or whether it's doing too much, right? Right. So if it's doing too much, sometimes when I'm in the screen and I'm looking at it very zoomed in, it's hard for me to see that, oh, I made that line way too dark. I'm not necessarily paying attention to that. But if I look over to my navigator screen, that's going to sort of help me get a much larger eagle eye view of what's going on. And then the other important screen that we have is going to be our reference screen. Now, if you guys have been on this live stream a couple times, I love me a good reference. Like, the way that I operate is, if a lot of times if I cannot see it, it's hard for me to create it. And that's whether I'm seeing it in my mind's eye or whether I'm seeing it on an actual image. A reference is very important because it gives us so much information. And we're going to go over some of that really quickly, because what I did is, in addition to having the reference in the reference panel, I actually brought it over to our screen so that we can have a closer look at what's going on in this image. Now, this is an image of a guy standing on a cliff. In the background, we have this beautiful bright sky. We have mountains that kind of tell us a little bit about distance. And the way that we can read that distance is that the farther away from our eye the image or the item is, the smaller it gets. That gives us a certain perspective. It also is important to note that the farther away from our eye the objects, so these mountains, for example, are, the duller they get, right? So that's something that we want to pay attention to. That gives us a depth of field. So sometimes I've seen, pictures where, for instance, my husband has one in our garage where it's a picture of two characters, and within it, there's not a lot of depth of field, right? So there's no real clear distinction between how close the background is to the images. So everything sort of looks in the face. I don't think it was intentional for that to be, but that is something that we want to pay attention to. And one of the ways that we can distinguish that is to look at how bright or how unsaturated an actual item is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out a red marker, and we're just going to break this picture down. And then what we'll do is sort of take these shapes and duplicate it. Now, it's not going to be exact. You know what I mean? It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be pretty or any of that, but we do want to have a good, clear understanding of what it is we're looking at so that we have a good, clear understanding of what it is that we want to draw. Now, with a reference, you may not want to draw the whole thing, right? You might just want to use the guy you like his pose, and that works for you. Or you might want to use the way that the clouds and the skies are laid out. It's totally up to you, but from the space of studying an image, we're just going to try to get as close as we can, but we're not going to beat ourselves up if it's not perfect, because I know for sure with me it's not going to be exactly perfect, but I do want to show you guys what it is that I'm looking at. So if we're looking at this image, the first thing that we want to note is that this is a horizontal or a landscape image, right? This is a landscape image, and there are a few things that we want to pay attention to. So what I just did is I pulled up the pen tool. If in Clip Studio Paint, if you hit P twice, it'll pull up a pen or pencil. I'm going to go with pencil just because I like the texture of it, and it just changes the way the mark looks, right? So that's a pencil, and then the pen looks fairly similar, but it behaves slightly different. So, within this image, the very first thing that, of course, we see and that we notice is going to be the figure, right? Now, we talked a little bit about figures and how to change the shape of a figure and how to break those things down in our last live stream a couple months, but we're going to use the exact same principles. So, if we're drawing this figure in this space, we have a pretty much a circle, right? We can break his torso down into a rectangle. And this is also why I chose this image, because I was like, this is real handy because I'll be able to be easier for me to show you guys how to break it down into very basic shapes. Now, if we're looking at his legs, we really can divide this up into another rectangle, just like so. Now, of course, there are going to be a lot more details. It curves in a little bit because his legs curve in a little bit. But all in all, we have a circle and two, or a rectangle and maybe like a parallelogram or something like that. And then his arms form two boxes. If we're, just plotting out our course of action, this is sort of what it's looking like. Now, if we want to take this a step further, what I'll do is lessen this a little bit. We can have a look at the way that his bones are structured. And this is going to help us sort of determine where we're going to place, his arm and different things like that. So again, we're going to start with our circle because that is his head, but his line of action is pretty much a straight line, right? Now, for those of you who have said, well, I can't draw a stick figure, it always starts with a stick figure, right? If you can draw just a few lines, that's going to help you sort of articulate where things go when you're drawing people. So we're going to start with his head, and this line represents his line of action. He's standing straight up, so it is a straight line. From there, he has two arms. Now, we know that our arms are joined to our body through a joint, right? So we want to remember that when we're drawing people. So his arms are going to connect to his torso through these joints. And then again, we're going to draw a couple of straight lines. This is going to give us an idea of how he's posed. And again, we have our elbow joints, right? And I hope mine wasn't ashy because I'm sure I'm showing it. But we're going to draw these elbow joints in, and we're going to then draw his forearm, right? His forearm, and then we can just draw a little bit of a rectangle for his or for his hands. Very simple. We're going to do the same thing for his hips and waist. Now, where we stopped our torso, because he has on a shirt that kind of makes it pretty easy for us to see, this is his waist, and that means that his hips are going to sit somewhere like this, right? So we have his hips, and we know that his legs are joined to his hips through another set of joints. And of course, his knees are another set of joints. And then we can connect those. And because he's standing straight, this makes it extremely easy for us to plot where the different parts of his body are. So we're looking at this. Let's take off our thing. He looks something like this. Now, again, it's not pretty. It's not exact, but it is giving us an idea of where things are sitting on the page. Now, because he's also in a larger environment, when we're looking at this picture, we want to kind of plot where things are in this environment. So yes, he is standing on the cliff. But there are a few things going on. If I zoom in just a bit, at first, at me looking at this at first, it looked like, we're going to switch colors just for you guys to see it. It looks like this is the part of the entire cliff, right? But if you look a little bit closer, it's not. That's its own thing. He's actually standing on this sort of small area like this. And then he has the greenery and all of this going on. But we want to be sure that we keep an eye on what's actually happening in the image. So just until I zoomed in, I was like, oh, he's standing on this larger sort of land of, body of land or whatever. But he's actually only standing on the edge of this cliff. So we want to pay attention to that, because when we go into actually drawing this, we want to make sure that we distinguish between what he's standing on and what's going on below him, right? Other things to plot out: where our horizon line is. So your horizon line is where where the sky meets the land. This is going to be important when it comes to distinguishing where our perspective is. So it looks like, and I'm using a lot of words. So if there are questions, you guys have questions, please interrupt me. Please let me know if you have any questions or anything like that. So in terms of our perspective, how far or close away something is and in what direction things are. So another thing that I'm noticing is that everything seems to be flowing in this general direction, right? So if we were drawing a box or something like this would be our horizon line. And then we would have a point here, and then everything sort of follows that point, right? So if we're
Mhm.
then drawing our boxes and things like that, like we've talked about drawing our boxes, then we would draw them based on this particular point, and then that would create a certain amount of perspective. So I'm noticing that in this image, everything seems to be following a certain direction. However, our horizon line is probably going to be the most important for now, because perspective is a whole it's a whole other animal. But to keep everything as simple as possible, we're going to sort of make note of where the sky and the land meet, and then we're going to break up this land a little bit. So I'm paying attention. If I'm looking at this from start to finish, where our top of the image is and where the bottom of the image is, I see that my sky sort of starts here on this side and maybe about the same place here, right? That's where we're going to note our sky, and then of course our mountain range sort of scales along that line. All right. And then
Mhm.
within that space, we have our sky here, and then we have our land here. It's also broken up into other bits and pieces of information, right? And that's going to tell us how close or far away our subject is from the farthest distance in this image. And then, of course, we have our clouds and all of that. All right. So, with that information, what I would do if I was going into drawing to study, and we're drawing this just to sort of get an idea of what it is we're looking at. And the pressure's on now because y'all are worried about me not judging you. I'm like, please don't judge how this is going to look.
Mm-mm, not at all.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to sort of duplicate this. Now it doesn't have to be again perfect, because if I'm using this just to study, maybe I just kind of want to see how this band kind of sits on the image. And I think I could probably go a little bit wider based on the actual image. Let me expand that just a bit so we can get a little more accurate to our source material. But I'm going to line it up, right? I'm going to line it up. And what I'm going to do is use the information that I've marked in my picture here to mark it on my drawing. All right. And this is no cheating or anything like that. I know there's like huge conversations, you know, people, or you shouldn't cheat or you shouldn't trace or whatever the case is. But if you're learning to draw, you use whatever tools and whatever mechanisms you have to learn from the image, right? It doesn't matter if you're tracing it. It doesn't matter if you're drawing on top of the image. Do what you got to do, right? In order to get better as an artist. So again, I'm using my pencil tool, and if you are in Clip Studio Paint, just hit P twice. That's going to bring up the pencil tool. And this time I'm using it in black just so I can kind of mark some of these main guidelines. So I would say my sky starts about here, right, on this particular picture, and it's pretty even. There are some bumps and waves and things like that within my reference picture, but I would say it starts about the same place. I'm going to lower this just a bit, and I'm hitting E for eraser. In this case, I'm using a hard eraser, meaning it leaves nothing behind, right? So our pencil. So we've marked in where our sky and our horizon line begins, right? And I can also use the markings from our bottom area here to see where our the area just below our figure is. And it looks like it's about here, right? And it goes there. And then I'm going to sort of do my best to track the shapes. Okay, so this is a bit of a semicircle. Again, this is not going to be perfect in any way, shape, or form, but this is just me getting the information. And then it kind of curves down like this. That gives me a little bit of a semicircle there. And then under that, let's say this is halfway in the image. So let's mark our halfway point here. Just shy of half, we have sort of the cliff that our main character is standing on. And then I'm just going to mark it down. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be super detailed. I'm just laying down parts of information so that as time progresses, I can add more and more details to this image. So this is about where the cliff is. And then if I want to, and I should, what I'm going to do is take note of the distance between the top of this image and the top of his head. Also, the side of his image and sort of the widest part of his arm, so that I can kind of see where to place him in the screen. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to have him like way up here, and I have his body here, and we want to make sure we are as close to our source as possible. So to do that, we measure, right? We measure to
Mhm.
see about where he is in the screen, and that's about halfway. So I'm just going to take a really, just a really quick measurement, about halfway, and he's, I'd say, about right here, right? And then I can sort of draw in those same joints, following what I've already done, right? His action.
Brittany,
Yes.
this may be a simpleton question.
No, by all means.
Are you using a pen?
Okay, great question. All right, see, great question. Ain't no simpleton questions, right? So, and I didn't do this at the top, so let me go back. I am actually drawing on the Huion 24 4K, and then this is the stylus that it comes with. So I am using, so I am using a stylus pen, and then the tool within the program is just a pencil tool. So that's why it sort of looks like a pen pencil, but I am
Mhm.
actually using the stylus pen. So great question. And actually, what I'll do is I will show you guys what that looks like really quickly. I'll just sort of pull it up on the screen so you'll have an idea of what that tablet looks like, just in case it's something that you want to invest in. This one is a 24-inch 4K tablet, and I'm going to probably freeze here in a bit. I noticed that whenever I bring extra stuff up, the camera wants to freeze up on me. But this is the company, or let me see if I can find that particular one. This is the tablet that I'm using. It does also come with like a keypad. It comes with a little keypad. I don't use this thing, but it did come with it.
Mhm.
So, what you can do with it is that you can actually program each of the keys to do different things. So that helps with the workflow.
Um,
So if I know I have a deadline within the week, the shortcut keys, and these are literally keys, so the shortcut keys are going to be your best friend. I just use my keyboard because that's just sort of what I am used to, but I do use the stylus pen, and with it comes different nibs. So this is sort of the default pen tip nib that it came with. There are also felt nibs, and what that does is allow you to get different kinds of pressure on the screen. So
okay.
depending on the tool that you have. So, for instance, when I was showing you guys the pen and the pencil, with the pencil, everything's pretty consistent, but with the pen, the harder I press, depending on the pen, the more variation in the line I'll get. So your
Mhm.
pen tip is going to help you sort of determine the pressure sensitivity, and then there's settings and stuff like that you can go through. But yes, it is a stylus pen. No simple questions here. If you want to know, by all means, let me know.
Thank you
But
so
yeah,
much. That's so helpful because I was just
no
like,
problem.
no way. Like, I tried to do it with my mouse and I was like, no way. I'm getting these weird
No,
ass lines.
no. If you can do it with a mouse, you will go.
Mm-mm, nah.
No, by all means, no. I
Luckily, I got a
definitely,
little thing in my screen is touch screen,
yeah, yeah. And
so
so
I'm
you
just gonna
can.
go forth like that. But that looks like a cool tablet.
Yeah, it is. I like it. Like I said, it is a bit of an investment, and I think I had gotten like a grant, which I was like, "Let's go!" I
Mhm.
was like,
Absolutely.
"Oh!" So I was able to upgrade to it. So it definitely is an investment. But they do have smaller ones where it's the same touch screen, where you get the same stylus and all that. So it'll come with the tablet if it is something that you do decide to purchase. I know with the iPad, the Apple Pencil, you have to actually purchase, but it works exactly the same. So it's
Same.
the exact same as the Apple Pencil. The only difference is with the Apple Pencil, you can sort of tap to do certain things, but with
Mhm.
this one, there are buttons. And then within this, I can program what I want the buttons to do.
Okay.
So for me, the bottom button is a right click. So anytime that I go into sort of my, let's say I want to do something with my layers, I just press the button and then it brings up this full menu. So I don't have to actually grab for my mouse. Now, there are instances where the mouse is clutch, like,
Mhm.
it's easier for me to do things with my mouse, such as like scrolling in and out. I use the just the scroll wheel to go in and out. And then this particular program also has a remote control that you can purchase separately where you can do the same. And it's not turned on, but if I wanted to zoom in, I could scroll
Mhm.
it just like you would
Mm.
with your mouse. But yeah, if you out here drawing with a mouse, you're doing real good.
I
But
tried.
yeah,
I tried. My lines looked wild. I said, "Oh no." I said, "There's
listen, that
got to
takes
be
a
some
steady hand.
wild,
Yeah,
wild."
no. So no, definitely get you a stylus pen. So if you do have like a laptop or like a Samsung or something like that that you're drawing on, a stylus works wonders. It works
Yes.
wonders. All right. So,
Thank you for
so
answering that.
no problem whatsoever. So yeah, if we're in this thing and we are just plotting our lines and things like that, what I'll do is just make sure you're taking measurements, right? So if we were doing a portrait, it would be the exact same way. We're taking measurements and plotting where different items are on the face. So we're looking at this like a sort of like a portrait, but it's just a larger image, and we're doing the exact same principle. We are plotting where things are on the canvas. So we've already kind of gone through and drawn on top of our reference image. So what we're doing is just transferring that information into our own image, and then we can add details as we go along. So yeah, we're going to now. I think we put in our joints. I'm not going to do hands because we don't have to have that bit of information right now. But I did mark where our elbows are, where our biceps are, and we're going to put in our line of action. Now, your line of action usually is pretty important. So, if you are drawing someone, let's say we want to draw a person floating, right? There's going to be
Mhm.
a certain line of action that the body takes. So, let's say I'm going to just draw a line, and this line represents this person's movement, right? And so, on that line, I may place her head here, right? I may want to play with the torso here and then the hips and things like that. And this is going to give me the feeling of floating. So, but we started with that main line of action, right? So our character is following this particular line.
Mhm.
Same with this image. And this one is a great one because he's standing still. So it's easier for us to identify that it's just a straight line, which gives us plenty to work with, right? So our line of action in this particular one is going to be the straight line up and down. And then from there, we can plot where his waist is, where his hips are, and then where his sort of joints from his hip to his knee, and then his knees to his ankles are. And we're going to put that information in now. And so it was about halfway down his body that we had our waist, right? This bit of information here. Halfway down into that, we can add our hips. Now I'm a little bit wavy because my line is a little bit wavy. So you notice in our reference image, his sort of shoulders and his hips line up, right? But
Mhm.
because I drew my line of action a little bit off, I don't have it I kind of created a curve where there didn't need to be a curve. So we want to pay attention to that bit of information as well. So I'm going to go back and correct it a bit. Um, and I'm going to just draw sort of a straight line because that's pretty much what we have in our reference image. And we're just going to add where his hip joints are. And then from there, his legs kind of come in a bit, about halfway from his leg to his ankle. We have our knees, and we're going to try to follow his sort of body a little closer than we did at the top, just so that we'll have less work to do later on, and then we'll have his ankles here. So far we have established sort of the outline of our character. Now we have to put him within this space. Now, again, if we want to zoom out a little bit, we're going to take a look again at where our sky is, and we're just going to draw it in. Now, because this is a mountain range, we have a little bit of freedom. We don't have to be as exact. We don't have to hit every bump and curve and things like that. That's not important, right? But we do
Mhm.
want to make note of where our sky meets our land, and it looks like about here. And from here, we're just going to add in some information. It looks like if his hand is here, so this mountain kind of comes up a little bit, and then it dips down, and it does something like this. And I'm going to refer to my reference here. Oh, my reference panel here. So it looks like it kind of comes up a bit here and then it dips down. And so already we've drawn in our background. Now we can go to the sky. Same thing. We want to kind of see where our sky starts, sort of where in the image it stops. So about right here. And then we have our clouds. Again, this is one of those things where you can be as loose and free with the clouds as you like. This doesn't have to be anywhere near as exact because that's not the purpose of the picture. We just sort of want to learn where things are on the page and go from there, right? And so
Mhm.
it doesn't quite reach the end of the page. It kind of stops about here, and it doesn't touch the top of the mountains until about here. And then we have a little something going on over here in a little wisp, right? Now, within the main part of the image, there's a lot going on. Doesn't look like it, but there is, and we know that there's a lot going on because the saturation from dull. So these colors are very low saturated to high saturated. There's a lot of variation. So that means there are a lot of little few bright breakups that we're going to have to make. So the first one and the most obvious one is the one that we marked just below here, right? And then we're going to go, and it looks like it hits his body about here. So we're going to draw in this ravine. And from there, it looks like this ravine isn't really big. Looks like it's pretty relatively small. So we're going to draw this in, and then we're going to just play around a little bit with our shadows because those look like shadows from the clouds. We're just going to kind of lay in where this is, and we'll define it a little bit more with the color. Same with this particular side. Looks like it's about right here. And there's a little bit going on. And of course we have this action happening here. So we'll draw that in. We also have this action happening here. We'll sort of draw a little bit of that in. And it doesn't, again, have to be perfect at all. So this is going to give us a little bit of a basis for our background. Now it looks like a whole lot of lines and it looks like a whole lot of nothing. But what we're going to do now is I am going to take this image that we've done, and in my layers panel, I'm going to create, actually what I'm going to do is I am going to change the blend mode of this to a multiply. And the reason that I'm going to a multiply is so that if I draw underneath it, it'll sort of stand out, right? So
Mhm.
what I'm going to do is create a new layer underneath it, and I'm just going to label this. And the rest I hadn't labeled, but we're going to call this color study. And then above that is our sketch. And I can lower the opacity of this. And what I'm going to do is I am going to, and it looks like I'm going to join these with it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this information and I'm going to plot in some colors. Again, we're not going for perfect. We're sort of going for, let's sort of see the study parts, right? Oh,
Mhm.
I messed up. Let me go back. Let me go back. So which one is our color? Okay. I'm just going to lower this a little bit. All right. And lower this. Alrighty. So I want to still be able to see a little bit of our lines. All right, color study. Here we go. I'm going to put that below everything so that it kind of goes underneath our sketch lines, but we'll be able to plot and plan where things are. So again, the further something is from us, the less saturated that thing is, and the closer something is to us, the brighter it is. Also, the further something is from us, the smaller it appears, and the closer it is to us, the larger it appears. So right now, if I move my hand looks bigger than my face. But we know that my hand's not bigger than my face. But the closer it is to your eye, the bigger it looks, and the further back it is, the smaller it looks. And so that is perspective. And so that's something that we want to kind of pay attention to. Also, the colors as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my brush menu, and in Clip Studio Paint, the shortcut for it is going to be B. In most programs, it's going to be B. And then in Procreate, if I'm not mistaken, I think you just click on the brush, if I'm not mistaken. But we're going to go to our brush, and I'm just using my regular old round brush. And I'm going to start to plot in some of this information. Now, our sky, and the way that I will do this is with our eyedropper tool that's going to be on the left side of the screen. On the little skinny panel, our eyedropper tool is here. In my case, I'm going to actually hit the eye button, and that'll help me out. What that'll do is allow me to hit eye for as long as I need it, and then release it from when I don't need it. So with that eye, I'll be able to mark this in. So we know that our sky sits about right here. Now, and it's not all going to be the same blue, but for right now, we're just going to give it a basic flat blue, and then we'll add some differentiations here in a bit. So we know that this is a basic blue, and we have clouds sort of in this area. So we can kind of pick a color from the clouds. I'm just going to pick a sort of a neutral color. It doesn't have to be anything exact because we can add details to it at any point in the process. We're just sort of plotting and planning where things are. And also I noticed that there is a lot lighter here. So what I'm doing is just laying in some basic colors just like so, and then we'll tighten it up a little bit later. Also, we notice that again, the further it is, the lighter it is. So I'm going to start plotting in some of those light colors, just as broad as I can be. I don't, again, we're not reaching for perfection. We're just reaching for the information so that we can sort of see what's happening, and then we can come back and tighten it up or add additional details wherever we might need. So it starts off a little bit like this. We have this sort of pale blue. Doesn't have a lot of saturation to it. It's not very vibrant, but the closer we get to the bottom of the screen, the more vibrant and the more that'll change. So I'm just laying this in very, very easily like so. And I'm just going to grab a random color within this ravine just so I can distinguish it from the rest of the background
Hmm.
like this, and we're just laying it in. Now again, we're using the brush tool, and Hotline is one of my favorite brushes, but this particular brush pack I got from an artist named Eric Anthony, who has also, I think he has Procreate tools, and I want to say I can't remember if these were free or if they're, but it wasn't expensive if it was to pay for, but this is one of my favorite brushes. I do just about everything with the Hotline tool and also with a dry brush that I have. So Hotline is just a regular old round brush. And sort of, I'll give you guys an idea of what the texture of that looks like. And I'm not pressing very hard, but the harder you press and the more that you press on it, the more layered the color gets. So the more heavy the color gets. So I like Hotline because I get a chance to build up on colors wherever I see fit. And again, we're just going to go ahead and lay in these very, very basic color variations and things like that. And we're just going to change it as we get closer and closer to the screen, because with this green, it also changes just like this. Now, again, earlier when we were looking at this, I thought that he was standing on the larger green part here. But later, as I zoomed in on it, I was like, oh, he's just standing on the cliff. So the way that I would work that out, if I were drawing this to be drawn, if I were trying to duplicate this image, if it were a portrait or something like that, and I needed it to stand out, I would actually take the liberty to go ahead and make that change. So it wouldn't have to be exactly perfect to what was going on in the scene. I just needed to be red so that there is no confusion for the viewer to see that he's standing on the cliff as opposed to standing on this larger green field that is below him. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to go ahead and paint it in as close to the color as I can, right? And this is going to be the local color. And what I will do is in his rock, or in the part that he's standing in, I'm going to make a very special effort to either make that brighter, much brighter than the green field, or much darker. And then there are ways that you can outline it so that it does stand out a little bit more, so that there isn't any confusion. So I'm just going to use the same local color. Now, again, this probably looks like, and I ain't even, let me look on y'all screen. Yeah, this looks like finger painted, and that's all it is. That's all it is. It doesn't have to be perfect at all. But we're going to tighten it up a little bit and we're going to change a little bit so that we do get a little bit more information of what's going on. But I'm not shooting for perfection here, right? So what
Mhm.
I just selected was a blend tool. A blend tool is also a tool that I use quite a lot of. Within my arsenal, I use the hotline brush a lot. I use an opaque, which is like a chalk brush, and I'll show you guys exactly what those look like. So again, this is our hotline brush. So I just get a basic color, and the more I draw on it, the darker the color gets. I usually use a rough chalk brush that'll give me a bit of texture, and it looks like this. Right, so it has its own set of texture, and then what I will do is I will use a smudge brush, and I will use that as a paintbrush. Even though we're sort of smudging and blending things around, sometimes you can use this as the actual paintbrush, and that'll allow you to get some texture as well. So those are my main three tools. Now, depending on what it is that I'm drawing, I might go into, like, I have a cloud brush. I have like a brush for foliage and things like that. So there are plenty of specialty brushes that you'll have access to. But in terms of just my regular day-to-day drawing, those are my three main tools that I actually put pixels to canvas with.
Mhm.
So you don't have to be super fancy or anything like that to get sort of that texture. So what I'm going to do is actually go in with smudgy, which is what we did this little bit of texture with when we kind of combine the two together. I'm just going to go and use smudgy, and I'm going to blend a little bit of this out. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. And there are different smudge brushes with different textures. So that is smudgy, which is my number one. But if I actually wanted to lean into some of the texture in the background, I could go into there's one called Frost. And again, these are from the same artist, Eric Anthony, where I bought his, but you can get, bought his brushes. It also came with some smudge brushes. It'll actually kind of pick up some of that texture. So it looks like I'm adding some bushes and things like that to the background. So you can play with your tools to imply certain things to sort of trick the eye to read as these are some trees in the background, or these are some, grass and things like that. So you don't have to draw in every little thing. You can sort of imply that information so that you're getting the idea of what it is that you're trying to articulate. And so we'll do that here, where I'll use the Frost smudge tool, which has a little bit of texture to it, and that'll sort of blend out some of this stuff so that it's not so blocky and so finger paint like. We'll kind of play with it a little bit, and then we'll get into adding some details and things like that. So yeah, so now if we're looking at this again, this is very blocky, but what we can see and what we can read from this is a differentiation between the saturation and color. So the further back the wrong brush, what am I doing? There we go. The further back the image is, the sort of lighter and more dusty the color looks, and the closer to our main character we get, the brighter and more vivid the color looks. All right,
Mhm.
so we're going to get into these clouds because I like to paint clouds. Now, again, I do have a cloud brush. But if I didn't have a cloud brush, and if I didn't have something specific for that, what I would probably do is grab my chalk brush, right? And I would go into this, and I would start playing with the clouds just a little bit. So just like our boxes, the clouds have a top and they have a bottom. On top, where it's closest to the sun, that's where you're going to get the whitest part of the cloud. And as it gets closer to Earth, it'll get a lot bluer, right? So we can sort of add bits and pieces like that to our clouds, just sort of going in the motion, general motion of a cloud. Again, it doesn't have to be exact. You don't have to worry about getting like the exact bumps, to the clouds or anything like that. We just want to sort of play and get the general sort of direction of what's going on here. Here we go, just like that. And I'm going to play a little bit with adding sort of the shadow to the clouds at the bottom, and then we can then add more of the highlights like so. And so now our sky is shaping up just a bit. And just like that, we have clouds, right? Very, very easy. You just play with it, right? Now, if I wanted to be more detailed, I would probably go ahead and grab my hotline brush again, and then I can go and add a little more white up here at the top, right? Still going in sort of the general rounded motion. And rounded, I'm literally doing this, drawing little circles along the tops here, and maybe we get a little bit of that white peeking through in some of the shade like so, just to add some highlights to what's going on. And then I'll grab my smudgy because I like that it gives me some lines and striations like so. And then I will pull around the colors like that. And for me,
Mhm.
I think that's good enough, right? All right. Now
Yeah.
here, what I'm going to do is we might tighten up this mountain in the back. So even though I have this base sort of dusty blue color, I'm seeing that there's a little bit of differentiation between, let me show you what I'm looking at. And I'll show you here on the reference panel. If I zoom in here, even though for the most part, if we squint at this, it's all the same color. But I'm seeing just a little bit of shadow right in here in my
Around the
mountain.
ridges. Mhm.
Right. So I'm going to add a little bit of that in. Now, again, I don't have to go in and draw each and every little line and each and every little divot and all of that. But I do want to sort of give the impression that there is a little more going on. And now, when I picked that color, I got the exact same color of what I'm sort of already have down. So that's when you use your own discernment and say, okay, I know I want to do some shadows. So let me go up here to my color panel. And for me, that's going to be at the very, very top of the screen. And I'm going to keep the same saturation, meaning the same vividness. And what I'm going to do is darken it just a little bit so that I have just a little bit of differentiation between that basic color and the shadows, right? So I'm
Yeah.
noticing that there's a shadow here. And I'm noticing also that there is a shadow maybe here, and it gives us the impression that the mountain is sort of going in a particular direction. And now that I'm looking at it based on where my figure is, I need to adjust my placements because where I was drawing I was drawing in here, right? But the shadow is more near his hand. So I want to be careful with where I place the shadows. And because this is a landscape, we do have a little bit of freedom, right? You can place it wherever you want to because this is a place that we're now making up and making our own.
Mhm.
But if we're doing it to study and to sort of learn how to use reference and how to draw from reference, then we want to try to be careful with that. So I did notice and corrected where I had that information there. And so we'll just make, and it again, we're not adding super dark shadows, even though we're reading it in our minds that there's a shadow, there are ridges there. We don't want to overpower our background so that our eye doesn't, we want things to make sense, right?
Mhm.
So we have those little divots, and then I'm learning or I'm noticing here as we move forward, there are little heels, right? And I'm going to go back to my dry brush because I just like the texture of it, and I think it would do well here. And I'm just going to add little parts and details and things like that, shadows in our image so that we can get some more information. And I'm going to zoom out of my reference because I'm painting on a relatively small scale based on my reference. I don't want to be too close to it and too into it because I'll end up making things stand out stronger than I actually want them to. So now I'm just moving around the picture, right? I'm going to add more and more, just boops and bops, little things to our picture that is going to enhance what we've got going on. I'm just paying attention to where things are placed. So it looks like within him, or within our character here, there is a darker sort of forested line down at the bottom. And that sort of tells me also that I drew in the bottom field a little bit off, right? So I can kind of correct that as I draw in more and more details. And this is sort of how I would approach studying, right?
Mhm.
I just want to see where things are. And then when I go into drawing my own from imagination, then I can sort of use this information to help me out later on. And I'm hoping y'all can't hear me, but my stomach, baby, is growling. And
We don't hear none of that. So can you
I
please have a
was
space?
like, listen, I was like, this is a good mic, and I hope it ain't picking it up.
It's not. It's not.
No.
Okay, yeah, because I was like, who is cutting up? Oh my goodness. And here I am telling on myself too. All right, so I'm just adding, like I said, more and more information here. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect at all, so don't put too much pressure on yourself if you're learning to draw something. This may take hours before I get it to a place, and we won't be here hours, but this may take hours before, if I'm drawing this and trying to draw and learn how this image is laid out, it may take a while for it to get to a satisfactory place. But in our case, I'm just, just having fun with it. So I'm
Mhm.
noticing in our ridge over here, it gets a little bit darker. So I did pick up some of that local color with my eyedropper tool. And then I'm going to use that just to sort of put in where this ridge is. And I'm also noticing that there are two different sets of mountains. Let me see if I can zoom in for you guys to see. Above this ridge, or behind it, I guess, there is a some foothills, and then even further back there are some other mountain ranges. So I want to kind of make sure that I add some a nod to that, right? So it doesn't have to be, again. I mean, guys gonna get tired of me hearing this. It ain't gotta be perfect, but we do want to make sure that we do pay attention to those kinds of things as we make our way through the scene. Now, if I wanted to, I can zoom out here. We can go ahead and put in some indication that there's somebody standing here, right? Now, I'm not going to make this. We're not going to draw it. Well, I guess I could. I was going to say we're not going to draw his clothes, but let's go ahead and give a little bit of body. So again, we have our head here, and luckily he has our his head behind it, back of his head facing us, so we don't have to worry about his face or anything like that. But if I had to give him some body, we would do
Mhm.
something like this, right? His waist will come in like this at an angle, and then his hips, because he's a man, he doesn't really have wide hips, but his hips and his legs sort of stand a little bit like this. And again, this is this is what you guys don't get to see before I start on my like tarot cards and things like that. Before I present you guys to the sketch, it's always ugly. Like it is always it is never sort of completed right out, but you just have to keep working at it, right, until you are satisfied with what's going on. And it looks like maybe I have his proportions a little bit off, so I'm going to move his waist up a little bit because I have the bottoms of his feet here. So we're using his head to measure. His waist is going to be two heads down. So what I'm going to do is actually measure one, two. So we this about right here, right? And then we have his butt here, and then his legs sort of come in together, and he has some pretty slim legs, so there's some space between his legs and his feet. So we're just going to indicate that, and we're going to add him some shorts and clothes and things like that in, and then there's his information like so, and his shirt sort of comes in like this. And then I'm going to bring his arms in a bit like this, and then following that joint line, we have his elbow here, and his hand sort of reaches out like this.
Brittany, you made sure to make this. Oh, you
Hmm?
you made this a third layer.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. So I did make this a new layer. And again, the importance of layers is that if I don't want to, let's say I want to erase the man and I make it on the same layer, if I were to erase what I've drawn so far on the same layer, it'll interrupt everything that we did earlier, right? So
Mhm.
anytime I want to, so it's on its own thing, and the background is on its own thing, right? So it's on its
hmm
own layer. And I am queen layers. I am queen layers all over the place because again, if I want to manipulate something but I don't want to mess up all that hard work that we did earlier, sort of
yeah.
distinguishing where things are, adding a new layer is so important. And so I know for you guys who do use Procreate, I know that depending on the size of your canvas, that'll only give you so many layers, so that is something to sort of watch out for. But within something like a Clip Studio Paint, within something like a Krita or your Corel Painter and things that you're actually working on like a computer for, there you just use as many as you need, right? And then if
Mhm.
we wanted to, we would just go ahead and combine those layers just to sort of save space. Because what will happen is the more layers you add, it kind of slows down the computer a little bit.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
So, and it'll take you a bunch to do it before it does, but you'll notice a little bit of a slowdown. And so, what I will do is begin to say, okay, well, I got a layer from like 2 weeks ago where I was experimenting with something, but I don't really need this. Let me get rid of this, right? Or
Mhm.
these two layers work on the same part, and I'm pretty done with it. I'm pretty satisfied with it. And even if I go back and make a change, it's not going to be too bad. So, let me merge those layers. And so that, you do a little bit of layer management like that. But yes, we definitely are working on its own separate layer, and those that is so important when it comes to digital art. So important, and that's one of the advantages I would say that digital art has, is that you don't, if you mess something up, it's a lot easier to correct it than it is if I'm doing a painting, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually working on a portrait for someone, and because I've been on my computer so much and haven't done a traditional painting in so long,
Mhm.
I'm like, dang, I messed that up, but I gotta like repaint it to correct it, or
Mhm.
I have to like manually adjust things. And so the beauty of having the digital space is that you don't have to worry about not so much.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes
Not so much.
you might
Yeah.
have to, but not so much. So it really works out well for us in that favor. All right, so we do have now our character in our space. We have him drawn in just a bit, and I'm happy with the way he looks. That kind of just gives us a little bit of a starting point for where we can add more details and draw him in. Maybe we can make him slimmer and do all we can add as much as we like, but that does place him in the scene so that now when we go back to working on our landscape, we can know where things are based on where he is, right? So we can
Mm-hmm.
use him as our grounding point. All right, so I'm going to go back to my color study, which is where we have all of our details for the mountain and things in. I am still using a textured brush, and I'm just going to go in and keep playing with it, right? Now, what I can do is he has some bushes and things along his feet. There are a couple of small bushes, and there's one off in the corner. Here's where specialty brushes can be a whole lot of fun, because yes, we can use our basic chalk brush, but there are brushes out there that you can get that'll help make this so much easier. And so one of the brush packs, I actually have a couple from this particular artist. Her name is Devin Kurtz, I believe. Devin, I know, remember her name is Devin, but I think her last name is Kurtz. She is wonderful with she does some beautiful imaginative works, and she has brush packs available for Procreate. She also has them available for Photoshop and Clip Studio, where it'll kind of help mitigate the time that it'll take to draw in grass strands and things like that. So I'll show you a
Mhm.
little bit of what it looks like if I can remember where they are, because there are quite a few. There are quite a few. She also has the skyscraper. She also has the book brushes. So in our two of wands that we'll be working back on Sunday, she has book brushes that if I wanted to, I could use to sort of help limit the amount of time that it'll take me to paint each individual brushes. And so I'll probably play around with that a little bit when it comes to working on that here this Sunday. But I'm going to show you a few of those brushes that she has. Now, when we were doing our land sort of plotting in the color, she actually has a brush called Field Dirt Blocking that would have helped this a whole lot. And so what that does is that kind of gives us what looks like ground, right? And so there's already
Mhm.
texture built in. So that's again where your specialty brushes sort of come to play, but they're not necessary. So I know I'm a brush person too. Like I have so many brushes, so many
Mhm.
brushes. But if you're starting out, I don't want you to worry so much about finding the right sort of brush and where did this person get that brush and how did they do the texture. I want you to, lock down those basics and make sure that you can work with your basic brushes before we get into some of those shortcut brushes. But they are available when you need it, and we're gonna use a couple of them right now. so, so I am going to see if I can find. She does have some grasses and things like that I can use. Um, let's see how this looks. So I'm just gonna pull this. pull a color from my reference image again. This is going to be a a green, and I'm going to play with it a little bit. See how just we already got our brush. I ain't got to jump.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
wow.
like that. I like me a brush
Yeah,
like that. Uh-huh.
so, so I'm just gonna use this bad boy and we're gonna draw in our grasses, right? We're gonna make it look into this. Now you can leave it as it is, of course. You're perfectly welcome to do that, but you can also add your own set of details to it to make it, yours and to make it a little more fleshed out. But it does help a
Yeah.
bit, right? So what we could have done, and I'll show you another way to do that, is let's say we want to use that particular brush but we want to give it a little bit of dimension, right? So what I'll do is I will actually go and use that same dark color and I will do like a sort of rough shadow in here, right? This is
Mm-hmm,
about where I
mm-hmm,
want these bushes to be. And then I'll go back to that brush and I will go a little bit lighter. And then what I'll do is start to add on top of that
mm-hmm,
shadow and it will help me with a little bit of dimension. And then
mm-hmm,
I will go into, oh, come on, brush. There we go. I will go back into, zoom in a little bit, and we can go back in and add more details or take away some of that we may not like as much. So I might not like how, oh, now see, this is why layers are important.
mm-hmm.
Because I'm going in and erasing something and now I'm messing up what I've already done. So I'm going to backtrack just a bit. We're going to experiment on a new layer.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go into just my regular old brush and we're just going to lay in that sort of base dark color,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we're
Makes
just
the other color like be very vibrant.
right. So it'll stand out and it'll give us a little more dimension to this grass that we're creating, right? And
Mm-hmm.
she like this is just one of the grass brushes that she has, but there are so many, right? There are so many in this brush pack. And what I'll do is I'll email you guys her name, but for everyone who's watching it, whether you're watching this live or playback, I will put that in the I will just pin a comment and then that way we'll have the list of the tablet company that I'm using, the artist whose brushes I've showed you guys that I've used, and that way if you want to pick those up, if you want to look into their work, you can also see and get that as well. So we're going to just add a little bit more dimension to this, right? And we'll just play with it a bit, and the more color variation we have, the more dimension it will add. And we can just play. And we can also do this manually as well, where we can go back into our regular old brush and we can say, okay, well, I don't really like how this is. So I'm going to, what I was trying to do earlier, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to erase a little bit so that we get sort of that blade look, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't have to leave it as is if we don't want to. It's up to you. Totally up to you. So we'll go back in here and I'm going to turn off my sketch. See if I remember which it is. Turn off my sketch and that'll give me a little more of an idea of what we have. So here we go. So I can go and add to this based on what we have.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like some of that color is pretty much the same as our field, which is why I was having a tough time differentiating between the field below him and where he was standing, is because there was color that was coming up from where the field below him is, as well as the grass, and it was sort of blending in. But that's again where you use your discernment to say, okay, well, I don't want that to blend in so much, so I'm going to go a little bit darker, right, so that that stands out. And where he has his where we are with the cliff that he's standing on, let me
Mm-hmm.
make that a little bit lighter, right? So I just picked up some of the color there and I can add some texture to it. And I noticed that there is a shadow here, so we'll add a little bit of shadow and we'll sort of play with some of what's going on so that we can make things stand out and do what we want to do. So that's pretty
I'm not
much.
gonna lie to you, shadow scares
Mhm.
me.
Yeah, okay, so here's a
Just
tip.
the idea, like
Hmm.
I'm always like, but I don't know what side the sun on. I don't know north,
Uh-huh.
south, east, west.
Yeah,
Like, so the
yeah.
bottom, yeah.
Okay, well, here's a tip that I always look for, and this is where I would encourage studying sort of basic shapes, right? So
Mhm.
what you're going to want to do is you can get a cube. I have a Rubik's cube here. You can get like a little ball, and what I want you to do is set up a lamp on this ball, position the lamp however you want to position the lamp, and pay attention to where the light hits and what's going on with the shadow. So I'll give you just a
Mm.
little bit of a demonstration here. So let's say, for instance, I'll go back to my regular brush, and we're going to go all the way down to grayscale. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to draw in a ball here. This is a sphere. Make my brush a little bit bigger so it'll be easier on me. All right, so I'm going to draw in a sphere. Now this sphere is set to 50% opacity, which means that the light is hitting it evenly. There's nothing to say that there's a bright side or a dark side, right?
Mhm.
From this point, I'm going to decide that my light source is going to hit it here, right?
Mhm.
Now, right now we
Mhm.
just have a really plain flat ball. I'm going to move some things around so that you guys can see this. Come on, there we go. All right, and I'm going to zoom in here. All right. Now, my light source is hitting the ball here, right? So that means on the opposite side of that ball, there's going to be a shadow. So
Mhm.
I'm going to go a little bit darker, and I'm going to start to place this shadow because I know that this is on the other side of the light,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
So this is the basic, right? The very like before we get into even further, because we're going to push this a little bit further. So this is where the base of our shadow is going to be. It's going to be on the other side of that light. Okay. Now I'm just using a little bit of a blend tool to make my life a little bit easier.
Mhm.
So we have a very smooth ball, right? Now, because that light hits at a certain spot, I'm going to add that to my shape.
Mm. Mhm.
Okay. So now that tells me again, it reminds me that my light is hitting the ball at a certain place, but behind that light is going to be a shadow here. And that's also going to place a shadow on our surface. So
Mhm.
if this ball is on a table, right,
Yeah.
the shadow is going to be on our table and our ball is going to sit something like this. And that's sort of where it is. And then we will deepen it a little bit. So I'm going to take this and notice that where I'm deepening it isn't actually at the edge of the shadow. And that's because what happens is you'll pick up a little bit of rim light from your surface.
Mm.
So you have the darkest part of the shadow on the opposite side of your light.
Mhm.
We're going to smoothen this out some more. But there's also going to be a little bit of light that catches at the very bottom of this particular shape. And of course, the shadow on the table is usually going to be your deepest and darkest.
Mhm.
So
That makes sense.
Wow.
So just pay attention to where you want your light to hit. So I'll show you guys. We'll go back a little bit, and I'm going to show you how this affected the Two of Swords. I'm going to see if let's see. I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to show you sort of how I play with that in sort of a much broader way. So let me move
Mhm.
this off to the side, and I'm going to show you that. But it does take a little bit of practice. Now, there is a class by Aaron Blaze. Aaron Blaze is really great with sales, right? So right now he has like a whole Black Friday thing. I think I purchased this class for $1, and this class tells you all about how to light a scene. It tells you all about how to light your characters. What did I just do? Light your characters and things like that. So if you're interested in a more thorough sort of breakdown and study of light, I would highly suggest looking that up. But let me show you. Let's go back to my Two of Swords, and I'm going to show you just a bit and of what that looks like in real time.
Mhm.
And it might take a bit for it to come up because this is a large file. But I'll show you sort of what happens when you're holding a certain light source and that light is only going to light certain things. So when you're thinking about placing lights and you're thinking about shadows, you want to take into consideration what the light is going to hit, right? So we're looking
Mhm.
at me just in this screen, there's a window to my left, right? So the light is highlighting the left side of my face, but the right side of my face is in a little bit of a shadow compared to the left side of my face where there is light, right? So the window is there. It's not lighting. You can see it. There's visibility there because I'm in a bright room, but you're not actually seeing this white on the other side of my face. So if I was
Right.
drawing it, there's a little bit of shadow, right?
Mhm.
Same with my shirt. There on this left side, we see that the light source is coming from the window, and it has my left shoulder lit up. Whereas my right, you can see a little more of the shadows in the creases of my shirt. So just take your time and think about where light is. They don't even matter if what direction. Just pick one. Right. So if
Mhm.
I say,
Yeah.
okay, the light is going to come from the left, I have to make sure that whatever I draw, I have to keep in mind that the light is hitting the left side of whatever I'm drawing. So that means everything on the right is going to be darker than everything on the left. So it's just a matter of keeping it in mind. But I have struggled with that. So I totally understand
Mhm.
where you're coming from, especially in a larger composition. So come
Mhm.
on, computer, we're going to show it. And then we're going to wrap this up a little bit because I
Mhm.
don't want to hold y'all too long.
Mhm.
We can sit here and draw on this picture from now until, but I don't want to hold you guys too long. But I do want to show you a practical application of what this looks like as soon as it loads. And I like Clip Studio because it auto saves. Procreate is great about that as well, where you can just close it down and pick right back up. I love that about those two things because I've had programs crash on me. And
Oof.
if
That's
I'm spending
unnecessary.
like 40 plus hours, like I had an image that I did portrait. It took me 40. I spent was up for 24 hours straight working on one part of it. And so leading up to that was, off and on a few hours. And that bad boy crashed and I didn't have them last 2 hours saved.
Oh no.
Oh
Oh no.
no. Ah, that's the
No.
worst.
Yes. So I don't save as your best friend. Okay, so here, let's look at this.
Ooh, this is nice.
So in the
So good.
background, so if we're looking at this and taking into consideration some of the principles that we talked about in terms
Mhm.
of distance, where the further something is, the duller it tends to be, or the lighter it tends to be, and it doesn't really matter. You can kind of pick which way it goes, but generally, the less saturated and the lighter it is. The further back you are, and the closer that something is to you, the darker it is. Now, because this scene is set at night, and in a forest, I had to actually give a light source to my character. So I gave him the lantern. Now, because this is a lantern, I had to take into consideration that this is a small light. This is not
Mhm.
going to light up the whole forest the way that the moon or the sun might. This is only going to light up certain parts of my character, and you're not going to see what's behind him. So if you've ever seen like a movie or someone standing in a doorway, and if you've ever taken a picture, if you've ever taken a picture and the sun is behind you, you can't see anything, right? So you
Mhm.
have to angle your face where you're not, in the sun. The same principles apply when you're thinking about lighting a scene. So we have this lantern, and I knew that it was going to light his face. It was going to light mostly the top of his arm because of where he was holding it. But I knew it wasn't necessarily going to light the area with the branches. Now it could have, right? I think that you want to make things make sense. So I didn't let it do that. But what I did do was extend that light source down to the bottom of his feet because it will light parts of the ground. So you do
Mhm.
have to sort of just take your time. And I was literally sitting here like, okay, all right, he holding his lamp. I don't think it's gonna hit that rock. So I'm gonna worry about, literally having this conversation with myself as I'm creating this picture and as I'm sort of lighting the way or sort of creating where the light goes. Now in the background, I wanted the focal point to be the swords. So there's a clearing in this. So there might be an understanding that the moon is shining down in this clearing. And so you'll see more details in that area. It'll still be blurred out because it's in the distance, but you'll see more of the bush being lit up. And I wanted my swords to glow. So that glow will extend to the bottoms of my bushes, and I might have a little rim light and things like that. So you just take your time. Just be like, okay, I think I want it on this side. So that means, okay, if I'm on this side and I know he's holding something in his hand, then surely this side is going to be lit up, but this side may not have as much light. All right.
Mhm.
All right. So I hope I didn't talk y'all's ears off too long.
No, that is
No.
awesome. And that's a really, really beautiful card. How this
Thank
came out,
you.
Brittany, is
Thank
really
you. It
beautiful.
is.
You. I so appreciate that. I do so much. And so what I will do is, again, all of the resources that and sometimes because I be talking so much, I be forgetting. So I'll go back and rewatch, and then I'll list all of the resources for you guys, and I'll email them to you specifically. But for anyone who's watching it, whether you're watching this live or the replay, I'll have that in a pinned comment. If not today, for sure tomorrow. So come back and make sure you get that information if there's something that you're interested in. And so, without further ado, Leigh, Sam, I want to thank you guys so, so much for being here with me.
Three,
Listen,
three, three.
Yay. Oh my gosh, 333.
listen,
That is amazing.
I know, right? Okay.
I'm
That is
sorry I
so.
interrupted you. I had to get it in.
No, what? I was like, what? So see how things work out. But again, I appreciate you all so much. So let's end it on a high note. So
Thank you
please,
so much, Brittany.
yeah,
Thank
well, before we
you.
go, please tell everyone if there's where people can find you, where they can see your work, where they can listen to your sounds, and where they can, see whatever it is that you have going on. By all means, let's do that.
Mhm. I'm Sam. My IG is right there. Cool Kid Sam. I also do my sound bowl. I have sound meditations at where is it? It's Sam Sacred Soundscape, and it's on.
Substack.
Oh, thank you. What is it, Leigh?
Substack.
Substack. Oh my God, brain froze.
That's
Substack.
all
Yeah,
right.
so it's just Substack Sam Sacred Soundscape, and
All
it's all
right.
together. Thank you.
I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram at lol.leonardo. However, I haven't put out a bunch of my work yet, so that is forthcoming.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Awesome. And if you guys want to see more of this, I hope to have you guys back on again because, like, I love having
Yay!
y'all on. Like, it's so awesome.
We
Yeah,
love it. We love
Yeah,
me
it.
so I
too.
hope that, and really next time I would like to see. I want to see what y'all got going on. So
Yeah.
don't be scared. I want to see what you guys have going on. But if
Mhm.
you're watching this live or the replay, I want to thank each and every one of you guys for stopping in. Because on this beautiful Friday, you could have been doing anything, but you chose to sit here with us and learn to paint and learn to draw. And I certainly hope that you all are getting your creativity juices out there in the world. If you want to be notified anytime we go live or post a new video, make sure that you subscribe and hit the thumbs up and all of those good things. Y'all know how YouTube works. It's the same way over here. Make
Mhm.
sure you do that. And so without further ado, thank you all for watching. Thank you again, Sam and Leigh. And we're going to call it a day. Peace.
Okay.
Yay!
Bye.
Bye.